Welcome back to another tip of the month. This time we're going to go over composition, how to write a tune and all that, everything that's related to that. The intro music you were listening to is a tune I wrote called The Unreal, and it was arranged for many instruments. If you hear the whole thing, there's horns and everything else in there. But we're going to go over some basics here to get you started. First, we're going to look at a couple of existing tunes and analyze their construction, and that way it'll give you a roadmap to help when you start writing your own tunes. Since this video is on composition, I figured I'd just use a couple of tunes of mine that have been published. The first one is a 2/4 competition style march called City Victoria Pipe Band's March Through the Cowpies, and you can imagine your own story behind that. This was published in Anne Gray's first book of tunes. If you can find this book anywhere, it's got tons of good stuff in there. And there's a close-up, but I'm not sure if it's out of print or not, but take a look for it anyway. So the first thing that you've probably already realized is the amount of repetition in pipe music in traditionally written forms, which is good. And we only have 9 notes, so you're going to run into a lot of repetition. This usually comes in the form of 2-bar phrases, and we're going to take apart this tune here and use a highlighter to show you how that works. This is a system that was used by my main teacher, Jamie Troy. He labeled the phrases, 2-bar phrases, A, B, C, D, etc. And it was a very interesting way of learning tunes. It was very useful, as you'll see in this first video. So here is the tune, and the first thing I'm going to look for is the ending phrase, the last 2 bars on each part. Typically these are going to be the same all through the tune. So as you can see with the highlighter, that happens all the way through every single part. There's a second ending in the last part we'll get to. In a typical 4-part tune, you're going to play that ending phrase 8 times. Now here is the second phrase of the tune, the bars 3 and 4 of the first line, and you'll see that that repeats all the way through the tune in every part as well. So at this point you've got half the tune. And now we have the very first phrase, which also repeats in the second line. So what you have here is a phrase pattern of A, B, A, and C. C phrase, the ending phrase, repeats all the way through. B phrase repeats all the way through. So these are all good things to keep in mind when you're writing a tune. You can use this system and it makes it a lot easier in any form of tune. Just a word about labeling the phrases A, B, C. If you end up playing music with other players, fiddle players and the like, folk musicians, they tend to label their parts, which we would call parts 1, 2, 3, 4. They label those parts A, B, C, and D. So that might get a little confusing, but as long as you're aware of that, it should be no problem. So here's another tune, tune of mine, Indoor Driving, which is published in the Victoria collection by Colin McGee. Another great book. I have a feeling it might be out of print, but if you can ever find one, tons of great stuff in here, just cover to cover, good stuff. But you can see, briefly I'll go through this with the highlighter, and you can see exactly the same system. Works for jigs, reels, hornpipes, almost anything. So Indoor Driving was written in a car. I was a passenger in a car going from Portland to the BC Indoor competition, hence the name Indoor Driving, driving to the indoor. Anyway, this thing popped into my head. I didn't have anything to write it down with. At that point there wasn't even phone recorders or anything. So I just tried to remember it, and when I got there, grabbed some paper and wrote it out. So that definitely does happen that way sometimes. So now you have a clear idea of construction, how to put the thing together. Now you need to get writing, come up with a melody of some sort. This is where it gets very personal. Everybody does it a little bit differently. You've probably heard of songwriters that wake up in the morning and just have an entire song finished in their head. Sometimes it takes months to create a melody. And one of the ways I've found that actually happens is if you're practicing another tune and you make a couple of note mistakes that leads into a new melody, use it. You can just build off that. There's many ways, and if you can just come up with anything and either write it down wherever you are or sing it into your phone, something to make so you can remember it, and then you can write it out later. Of course, you need to know how to write things out from a thought that you had in your head to get it on paper. That might be a subject for another video to go through all the theory and that, but if you're playing at this point, you know how to read, and you can easily take that and figure out how to write out a melody. Naming your tunes is always fun too. The traditional way is to name a piece of music after a person or a place. You'll obviously seen a lot of those in the tunes you're already playing. I kind of went a different route with naming tunes such as I Hate My Toaster, Buchanan in a Blender, and the other ones here, Indoor Driving, etc. But they're fun. If you make them memorable, people might be more likely to play them as well.